All right, time to share one of my favorite pro tips, importing entire models directly from Excel. So in Power BI, we've got this import menu that we haven't really talked about with the option to import Excel workbook contents. And note, this is different from using the get data option and pointing to an Excel workbook. This is actually importing additional information about an entire model from Excel into Power BI. So what's incredibly helpful about this is that this import process preserves just about all of the information about your model. It transitions information about the data source connections and queries that are in place, all the file paths. It maintains the query editing procedures, all of the applied steps, the data modeling details like the relationships, hierarchies, field settings and formats, etc. And then last but not least, all of the calculated columns and calculated DAX measures that you've added to your model in Excel. So quick pro tip here, Power Pivot in Excel does actually include some features, some really helpful features that Power BI does not. So some additional filtering options, a little bit more of a user-friendly DAX interface, for example. But the fact is, if you're more comfortable building models in the Excel environment, which is covered in my Power Query, Power Pivot, and DAX course, then go ahead and continue to build there within that environment, and then import those models into Power BI for the reporting and visualization phase. You'll end up at the exact same place. It's really just which environment you're more comfortable in. So sit back, relax for a minute, just watch this demo. I'm going to show you what this looks like when you actually import a full data model from Excel into Power BI. All right, so I actually want to start in Excel for this one. This is my Food Mart data model complete file, which is probably bringing back some flashbacks to students who were in my last course. And basically we've got a data model here with a bunch of lookup and data tables. Got a diagram view, which, there we go, should show us all of the relationships in place. We've got parameters and disconnected tables as well. So it's a pretty robust model. And on top of that, if I manage my measures, we've got all of these DAX measures that we created, which would be a huge, huge headache to have to recreate from scratch in Power BI. Luckily, I won't have to. Now, one thing to note here, I also have these additional pivot tabs with things like conditional formatting and data bars and icon sets. Now, there is no equivalent pivot view quite like this in Power BI. There's a matrix visual that's similar but not quite the same. So these views, these actual pivots, these additional tabs will not transfer over. So I just want to caveat that. So from here, I'm going to open up a blank, brand new Power BI file so that I can import this model directly into it. So here we go, blank file, untitled. And now again, instead of going to get data from Excel, I'm going to choose this top left main menu and import Excel workbook contents. Big difference here. And when I do that, I can navigate to my Food Mart data model complete file. It gives me this little note that says, hey, we don't work directly with Excel workbooks, but what we can do is extract the content so that you can use it right here in Power BI Desktop. And so I read this, I'm like, all right, that sounds great. Let's go ahead and start the process. And we get an error, which is pretty straightforward. It says, oh, we can't do it right now because your model is open in Excel. So easy fix. Let's go ahead and close the Excel version. Don't need to save any changes. And let's go ahead and retry that. There we go. So now it says, okay, we've got some tables that exist in that original workbook. In other words, they were created with actual cell ranges in Excel. And it just says, do you want to copy the data and create a version right here in the Power BI desktop environment, or keep this remote connection back to the Excel workbook, which sounds like kind of a nightmare. So I'm going to say, let's take the data from that price threshold and age threshold table, and let's copy it so that it exists here as well. And now it runs through all these fancy things. That was real time. That was about, I don't know, 5 or 10 seconds. And check it out. It's migrated all of these items, different queries, different data model tables, all these KPIs and measures. And when we press close, obviously there's nothing in our report view because there's no equivalent to the report view in Excel. But if we go to data, check it out. All of our tables exist here. all of our fields, including all of these calculated measures. I think there's a bunch here in my transactions table. Yeah, they've all carried through, all of our measures. In the relationships view, we can see that our data model with all of its table relationships is still intact. It got a little bit scrambled, so it doesn't look quite as nice and clean, but we can go ahead and just rearrange things as we see fit. So some of these details aren't really going to make sense quite yet until we dive into the data modeling and the DAX sections of the course, but I wanted to just give you a little preview and let you know that there is this option to pull a fully baked model from Excel straight into Power BI.